So finally, Charlie shared with me that, because I asked him the other day directly, and he said the fifth dimension is the level of the individual unconscious. So our unconscious, if you can get your head around this, is not just in your head. I need to double check this. Okay, so that was rather exciting. It's exciting. So our unconscious is not limited to our physical bodies. Hi. In the last podcast, I spoke at length about the individual unconscious. Today, I'd like to focus on the collective unconscious. Is it real? Does it exist? If so, where? And if we assume that it does, what are the implications of its existence? Let me preface, as I often do, this talk with the old adage, as above, so below. Why? Because we exist in a universe that constantly hints at a fractal pattern of creation. The fractal segments from which this third dimension have been formed is the soul dimension, which, as far as we're concerned, is the maker of all physical bodies, from the smallest atom to the largest universe. Now let me add a little caveat here. Charlie, the 12th dimensional soul, who channels and collaborates with me, acknowledges that he is part of a grand soul hierarchy of which he is but a tiny cog. For example, there are souls in charge of the collective movement and expression of entire galaxies, and there is one singular soul for the whole universe. So essentially what I'm saying is you got scattered souls, infinite number of wisps of God energy, and they gradually coalesce. Somehow they become one. Their vibration unifies them in some way. I don't know what's going on. And out of little souls, you get bigger souls. And out of bigger souls, they come together and you get bigger souls. And so on and so forth, till you get eventually to one soul, which is the soul that represents, just like within us, there is my consciousness. So within the universe, within creation. So within creation, there is one overriding soul who is responsible for this universe as we know it, as well as it represents the whole of the soul dimension. And you could say this is God's shadow. Okay, I'm grasping at straws because it's way beyond my ability to truly understand, but this is the closest I can get to it. So Charlie, nevertheless, is a part of the soul dimension, expressing and being in accordance with the will, love, the ray that descends from beyond his own understanding and empowers him. So Charlie is the equivalent, this is according to him, he's like a red cell in the blood flowing through the artery of the body, aware only of its own little function and purpose. I'm trying to share with you a sense of scale, that we are completely insignificant. We're nothing And Charlie, whom I channel, also considers itself completely insignificant within the scope of creation. And this is why Charlie, he says, well, I only know so much because it's beyond me. And we have to honor that we're all limited. And the truth of creation is beyond just about everyone. So I did struggle with that. So well, maybe Charlie, maybe you're a little bit more than you could say this is my ego. Maybe you're a little bit more than just a little cell, a little blood cell. Maybe you're a gland or an internal organ. And he said, no, we really are nothing. The reason why I'm sharing this is that we need to accept, as human beings, we need to accept how relatively meaningless we are in the aspect of creation. It's our egos within religion. Oh, we are God's chosen. God has chosen us. It doesn't matter which religion. Okay, some people think they're more God's chosen than others, but it doesn't matter which one it is. It's all ego. We are absolutely meaningless. I mean, we're meaningless within the concept of the universe. Just think of the sheer number of galaxies, which are infinite. And add to that the planets within them, which are infinite. And add to that the human, not necessarily human beings, but the life forms within all these, which are also of such huge numbers that individually we're meaningless. A grain of sand in the beach is meaningless compared to the sand that exists. I think most of us would agree with that. You struggle to find one individual grain of sand once you've lost it. So the sooner that our egos can get in line on behalf of our souls, the sooner we can just say, let thy will be done. Presently, humanity's collective unconscious is replete with nightmares, superstitions, and powerful collective emotional fervor. We see this play out constantly, whether it is religious or political zealotry, woke, climate change, narratives, the recent events with COVID-19, or our pervasive fears regarding our physical health, which we have good reason to be worried, to be concerned by. So it is no surprise that all these movements, they all rely heavily on fear, loss, and our desperate human need to be loved, to be deemed significant by someone, and for most people to feel important, meaningful. Carl Jung spoke in his time of the collective archetypes. To this we can add the pantheon of religious icons, as well as the old gods, such as those of the Egyptian and Norse pantheon. Let me share a story from my early days when I was training to be a healer in my late 20s. And I would attend a weekly group, for healing sessions, and we would focus our energies on whoever had asked to be helped. That evening, this particular evening, sitting in a circle around our client, suddenly, as we were working on this person, the Virgin Mary appeared to me, or should I say, she appeared in front of me, around, surrounding the client with her robe, protecting him. And it was a blue robe, quite voluminous. To me, she appeared totally solid, real. She was real, sensed her. Now, I had been brought up a Catholic, but had moved away from the church by the time I was 13. Afterwards, when we finished the session, I asked the healer in charge about the apparition, and he replied that the blue robe was a color of protection and that my unconscious had simply shown me an archetypal image representing the specific collective energies being generated in the room that night. So the Virgin Mary hadn't really come to me. I'm an elapsed Catholic, but hey, here I am, come back to the faith. No, it wasn't like that. This was a representation of the actual energy generated by my unconscious had shown me, if you like, my psychic ability was manifesting in front of me what these energies were like. And it brought the Virgin Mary as an archetypal energy that I could relate to from within my unconscious bag of tricks. Okay. Now, why would that be? Well, over hundreds of years, millions of people have prayed, and I've seen them, in modern day, not modern day, but when I was a young lad in Spain, they would be praying to the Virgin Mary. There was a fervor which is very, very intense. And that many people over hundreds of years generating this image, sensing it, kinesthetically making it real for them, asking for whatever it is they wanted to ask, that gradually became part of the collective unconscious. And it can be tapped by anyone who is in the know. This emotion, they're emotional, they're not feeling, they're emotional, but these emotional energies are available. So some people might say that this is deposited in the Akashic records, which I've spoken about before, although Charlie and I have a different take on it. But nevertheless, that would be a good explanation for what people refer to in the occult tradition as to the Akashic record, where the collective visualizations and emotional energies which are concentrated into images end up in this other dimension, whereby it is available to us from the collective to the unconscious. And sometimes it can come our way regardless of whether we want them or not. And that's something I will be speaking at some time. Anyway, so whether you are an enlightened being or a black magician, you can, if you focus, you can gain access. So this emotional energy is powerful in its own right to influence people directly. If you have ever sat in an empty church, which has been imbued with hundreds of years of people praying full of fervor, you will appreciate what I mean. The emotional vibration left behind within that space can be really powerful. And that reminds me of the people from the healing group that I used to belong to, I used to do a lot of meditation, a lot of work on myself in my 20s. And I would meditate assiduously, day in, day out, always in the same place. And this one time, the people who were in charge of this group, they came into my home, and we were chatting, and they were, oh, wow, this must be where you work. Because to them, the emotional energy, in those days I wasn't very in touch with my feeling energy, the emotional energy was very palpable. So they could really sense it. So we can imbue clothes, we can imbue rings, we can imbue our buildings where we live, we can imbue it with emotional energy. We can also imbue it with feeling energy. But I'm saying there are forces in the world which we have no idea how we are affected by them. So let's recap. As an individual, you're more likely than not carrying a lot of scripts in your personal unconscious related to your past experiences. Pleasant experiences, but a lot of unpleasant experiences. And the unpleasant experiences, because they were unpleasant, because the emotion was intense, because your mind tried to protect you from such intensity, you would disassociate from the connection with your body and from the emotion itself. It doesn't go away. It stays in your unconscious. You grow up and you have quite a large number of these. And this is what I mean when I say a script. This is what I call a script. A memory that you have not processed, which is in your unconscious and which is manipulating your actions in the world. Every time you are reactive with someone, that's a script. What's happening is you have been reminded, and your mind has, faster than the thought, just like that, poof, it's gone in and poof, it has suppressed the emotional expression that is associated with that particular memory from your past, emotions that were locked in your past. And what happens then is you get triggered, i.e., you react. You don't experience the original emotion. You experience a reaction to that emotion, which is not so nice. And usually you blame another person. So you blame someone else or you blame yourself. And often this happens in relation to other people. But sometimes it can happen because you've been daydreaming, you're sort of in a sort of reverie of some sort, and the memory is close to the unconscious, the top of the unconscious, and it just about surfaces. And suddenly your mind experiences this is threatening, and poof, it switches you off. And then you'll come away from that and you're not in a good mood. You don't know why. But you could have been in a good mood. You could have experienced that event, that emotion. You could have cried. You could have really commiserated. You could have felt such relief from relieving the trauma and letting it go, but you don't, because you lack the emotional intensity, the capacity for emotional intensity to experience such emotions. The problem is that when we react to such emotions which are not re-experienced within us, when we are confronted for that split second with that emotion and we become reactive and we then take it on someone else, we then may take it on an us, depending on how it goes. It could escalate. But what then happens is negative emotions are being expressed and they re-traumatize us, i.e. the initial emotion that we didn't have the emotional intensity to experience has now been sent even further down the back of the unconscious. Because what we've learned is it is too dangerous to experience such emotions, whatever they were. And that's the sad bit about human beings. And this is why you have to be really careful about therapy. That if you go into therapy with anyone, the gold standard is that you experience the emotion in your body. If someone gets you to relive a past experience, an emotional experience, but you don't connect it within your body, i.e. within the armoring that you've built up over it, unless you can make that connection, unless you're guided to make that connection, you will end up even more traumatized. And I know a number of people who, after 10 years of therapy, weekly therapy at that, were worse than when they began. So just a little something to bear in the back of your head. So what I've just described as affecting the individual unconscious also applies at the level of the collective unconscious. As individuals, we're unaware of this, but we feed this collective reservoir quite unknowingly with our fears. And the examples of this are a lynch mob. You know, let's hang the guy, and suddenly you begin with 2, you end up with 40 people. And they all get carried away as a lynch mob. When a country goes on a war footing, the same thing happens. Most of the population, it's weird, but people quickly get into line to hate, to dehumanize the alleged enemy. And this can happen on both sides. I mean, I'm not going to say it's just one side or the other, but this can happen on both sides. There's a polarization that goes on. And you are the enemy, you are an animal, you're less than human, you are the devil incarnate. So the question is, but why does this happen in the first place? And this is where the Archons and the minions come in. The minions sit at the helm of all the levers of propaganda. This has happened for hundreds of years. This is not new. It's happening right now, but it's not new. And in the olden days, it was much easier to control how people thought because there was no internet. Not many people were that well read. And the world has changed a lot. And propaganda has become a science. And they know that if you repeat a lie again and again and again, then it will be taken on board without question. Certainly, it will be taken on board without question by the NPC players of the world, who will absorb it, regurgitate it, and experience that internalized fear and loathing into the world, into the collective unconscious. And it is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because what goes into the collective unconscious will then seep into the Wayfarers. You see, the Wayfarers, these souls who are ready to wake up in this lifetime, they're not out of the woods until they deal with their traumas within their own unconscious, until they know who they are. They will get these words, these images, these unnamed fears that will arise from the collective unconscious, and they will assume that it's them. They will think, oh, I'm fucked up and this and that, it's all me, hate myself, whatever, without realizing that all this negativity is not them. Is emanating from the pond, this turbid, horrible, collective unconscious pond, which is filled with negativity and is infecting anyone who is in contact with it, which is pretty much all of us. So it doesn't matter whether you are a soul that is waking up. You will be carried away by this tsunami generated by all these NPC players who are almost half the world. We've got a fight on our hands, guys. Just have no idea. You need to get your act together. You need to begin to learn to know who you are. Because unless you know who you are, you won't be able to separate what's yours from what is someone else's. Now, for years, Charlie, he never shared this. He'd given me an image of creation from the lowest souls all the way up to the very top. In terms of, he split it up, just for my sake and for your sake, he split it up into dimensions. He would say dimensions. The soul dimension is all one, but to make sense of it, he would say, well, you've got the first dimension, then you've got the Archons in the fourth dimension, and then you've got all life in the ninth dimension. What's in between? And nothing important right now. It doesn't matter. So finally, Charlie shared with me that, because I asked him the other day directly, and he said, the fifth dimension is the level of the individual unconscious. So our unconscious, if you can get your head around this, is not just in your head. I need to double check this. Okay, so that was rather exciting. It's exciting. So our unconscious is not limited to our physical bodies. It actually resides, part of our unconscious resides within the dimension. And this is what happens when we sleep. See, I'm learning as I'm speaking. So when we go to sleep, part of our unconscious is being processed by soul in this fifth dimension, in this level which is beyond the physical universe. And by the same token, the collective unconscious belongs to the seventh dimension. So I'm filling a few more blanks. Up till this moment, I've given you a story where we are all at the mercy of our unconscious and at the mercy of the collective unconscious. And to a great extent, that is true and has been true. But it doesn't have to be true. Because we human beings have got abilities. We're simply not aware that we have them. We have the ability to generate not simply emotions, but feelings, to generate images, to make those images real into thought forms by adding a kinesthetic sense to them. And these are very powerful. When we generate this and we put this into the collective unconscious, we are now beginning to generate a different reality from the one which the Archons and their minions are generating with all these NPC players. You know, they're just like bots. That's how I see them now. I see them like telephone bots who will regurgitate whatever's put into them collectively. And they can control reality. And in fact, they have been controlling it. But we can do the same. But for that, we need to know ourselves. We need to connect with our feelings. And to the extent that we haven't been doing that, we have been at the mercy of the unconscious generated into us. And we ourselves have been feeding the machine of the collective unconscious. I was speaking with Charlie the other day, and he said, well, we are standing on a knife edge. It's 50-50. It could go either way. Right now, we could end up in a world war within the next almost 10 years from now. Anywhere between 5 and 10 years, we could end up with a world war. And the Archons would love to do this because they are aware. Bear in mind that they belong to the soul dimension. They're beyond time, which means that they can foresee the probabilities of what is going to happen into the future to some limited extent. Not the same, they're not in the same ballpark as the soul, the other soul dimension, but they do have a little bit of projection into the future. And they were aware that the Kali Yuga was coming. They were aware that this was an opportunity for people, for wayfarers to wake up, to become independent, to think for themselves. And they were desperate to stop this event from happening. So they have been, this war that's in the makings, these wars which are happening now, they have been years in the making. They didn't wake up one day and say, oh, this is happening, you are the enemy, I'm going to kill you. No, they have been planning this. It's been in the offing for more than 20 years. They have been steadily working towards this. And what they are working towards is making it impossible for wayfarers to wake up, for connecting with their consciousness, to be themselves. We need to change reality. And we change reality, first of all, by connecting with ourselves. Who am I? How do I feel about myself? can I love myself? Secondly, I need to focus on loving the people around me. Not loving me in a transactional way, but loving by deliberately giving time to opening up our hearts and our feelings and loving our partner. What does it mean to love our partners? I'll tell you what it means. It means that we can see them, we can see that they're damaged, we can see that they're imperfect, we can see that they have lots of foibles, but we love them anyway. Because we can see the child in them, we can see the good bits in them, we can see the soul in them. We can see that part in them that is joyous. And so we focus on that. And we focus on that with our partners, with our children, with our families. And with that comes the feeling of love. And gradually, as we get stronger at doing that, we can then send our love to the world. I did a meditation a few years back. It's a great meditation, how to be one with the world, to generate feelings of unity. A little plug once more. I'm putting a course together. It will be available within a couple of months. And I'm halfway through putting the first section together. And this will help you guys who are ready to learn to know yourselves. Because without knowing who you are, everything else is fantasyland. The truth is in ourselves. Know yourself and you will know your function in life. Give me a like, say hi, ask questions. Bye for now.